So we are starting now after this, very interesting first round of talks. We start with the second round. My name is Heiko von der Leyen, and I have the honor to moderate this session together with Pantelis Natsivias. And I was actually wondering. I saw the poster outside with James Lind, and what James Lind would have said 250 years ago if he would listen to all this discussion in terms of clinical research. I guess for me, it's always amazing what happens in between, these last years, 10 years, 100 years in clinical research. So after some, let's say, baseline discussions in the first part, we now going into relevant examples of novel approaches to data-centric clinical research. And the first talk actually will be by Enrique Bernal Delgado from the Data Science Center for Health Services and Policy Research Group in Zaragoza in Aragon in Spain. And his title of his talk will Reusing Sensitive Data in Public Health Research, a Federated Approach. Enrique, please.
So thank you very much. Thank you, the organizers, for this very nice invitation, the opportunity to share with you some thoughts today. I'm maybe wearing a couple of hats. One is I'm a data scientist, epidemiologist by training. I've loved Thomas introducing Bradford Hill Principles, because it's our first book for the epidemiologists. So very nice to listen to Bradford. So thank you, Thomas. I see you there. But also I'm wearing the hat of someone that has been actively working in the conceptualization of the European health data space for secondary use, with the idea of or promoting the idea that any research is possible in Europe using data that is collected for any other purpose, usually to care patients, but not necessarily just to care patients. The registries that Thomas came towards all the potential data sources that the European data space will be interested in. So with these two hats, my presentation today is a bit intertwining the examples of real examples, some of them already published, some in the drafting. So real examples. Now, and telling a bit of my biography in the end. Some of them published, some are in drafting process. Some example is closer to clinical research, but I'm, as a public health researcher, the examples are a bit different. So taking this into consideration, that I'm wearing two hats in the narrative. So I'm moving from one place to another. Yes, see what we've done in the past almost 10 years. So I wouldn't say it's a novelty. We are not in the growing part of the innovation. We are not in the dropping one. We are more or less stabilized. So what I'm presenting to you is quite a sustainable approach to the reuse of real data to respond multiple research questions of interest in my domain of science, policy-oriented research questions. Those lessons can be reused by yourselves in your approaches. I tend to be very sketchy to foster, afterwards the dialogue. So allow me to be sketchy today as well. For examples, and these examples, you may know that the commitment for signature of the European health data space has been published 1 month ago. So now in a position that from now on, we are really building the European health data space for secondary purposes. So the so-named health data at EU. And these 4 examples can be very well a good representation of the type of things, the type of research questions that will be fostered within this space. I will go very thoroughly. Throughput times in the attention of acute ischemic stroke. Here, the inference in our domain of science is not the patient, is the system. Is the system, maybe the hospital, maybe the whole system, maybe an aggregate of providers, but it's not the patient anymore. When we do inference to patients, we then do clinical research, as you do. But the only difference is to whom is the inference thought of. Throughput times. In this case, 4 health systems. So imagine 4 health systems, all the population. So the point is not simple, it's the population. We sometimes take subgroup of populations, but usually we go for the whole population. 4 health systems, the whole population, arriving to, then who is arriving to emergency department with the suspicion of a ischemic stroke, acute ischemic stroke. We do here process mining approach, it's very descriptive. And then the data sources may be of your interest, maybe emergency data coming from electronic medical records, administrative records, can be hospital data, claims data, clinical data within the claims data, and from the injuries, also administrative data. So multiple sites, multiple data sources, multiple data holders. This is the question. And you can see here the results. This has been published already. You can go there. This is the actual experience of all those who appeared in an emergency department over 2 years in 4 countries with the suspicion of ischemic stroke. And you can see that you can now trim down this and see, well, what we are representing here is time to treatment in this process mining. Brain is time, so time to treatment is key. Okay, this is the example. You can just take into account, I said at the beginning, sketchy. The point is that 4 health systems, all the population, number of data sources from many data holders, all individual data, all sensitive data. Second example, changes in time to first treatment in breast cancer. You know this one we look. March, April 2020, we had these strong restrictions, right? Then women with a diagnosis of breast cancer got the treatment in time. There was changes before and after this restriction process. To respond to the question, again, for health systems, I didn't tell you about the systems before, by the way, just in case. Spain, Italy, Marquet, Latvia, and Croatia. In this case, 4 health systems, all the population under observation. Here is time series, the joint point and neural network forecasts and meta-analysis using the Oxford Stringency Index. Data sources. It's not that simpler. Hospital data, claims, cancer registry. We include registries here. Primary care data, clinical data from primary care, injuries, administrative data. You can imagine that to get individual sensitive data, you need to link those data sources that come from different data holders in different countries, but not moving the data from the premises. Otherwise, and here are the results. You can see in Aragon, Belgium, Marquette again, Italy, and Wales, England. The population is all the women with a diagnosis of in the 2 months before, and then see the line, dotted line represents joint point differences. On the right hand side, you see that the forecast, except in the case of Wales, was following. So the observation was following the forecast, except in the case of Wales, where the time to treatment increased. In the other countries, did not. Also published, but it's in press. It's accepted that it's in press. Apparently in July, you'll have this in the European Journal of Public Health. On the different one, risk of death or unplanned readmissions as outputs of patients that are suffering, are exposed to, let's say, hip fracture surgery. And in this case, we have 43 health demarcations, 39 United States. We have Ontario, we have Oregon, we have Sweden, we have Finland. So it's not just in Europe, it's also elsewhere. Here is time to event using a generalized additive model, hierarchical model, and then hospital data claims, injuries. I mean, so they're very simple in terms of data sources. The complexity here is not in the analytics. The complexity is in the different sensitivity to data access in the different places. States, different thing. Ontario, much more stronger. The difficulty to get the access to data. As always, population-based, sensitive data, individual data. And you can see here the contribution of the hospitals in the explanation of the risk of death or the risk of admission in all these thousands of hospitals in these countries. Okay? And the last one is closer to your work. It's not clinical research. The inference is not on the patients, it's on the program, vaccination rollout, the COVID-19 vaccination rollout. In real life, the vaccination rollout was effective in reducing the transmission or having the patients free of infection, the population free of infection in those that were exposed to the vaccines, irrespective of the schedule. And this is the question here. And yet 3 health systems, all the population under observation. This is now in drafting target trial approach. This is a hypothetical trial that we want to mimic. And then there is a variety of data sources, hospital data, vaccination registries, COVID-19 registries, and injuries data. And here you see, I mean, of course, one of the points to when using real world data and you try to emulate a clinical trial, you need to make sure that you have randomized. The only way is to do conditional exchangeability possible. For example, using matching techniques and then test whether the matching worked. That you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, how the different variables in the causal model worked when we matched, then see that there is no difference in the key variables that explain the causal relationship between the vaccination and the transmission. And then you see the actual results in Spain, in Belgium, and Finland. And you see that the restricted, so this is cumulative incidence. It's not survival, it's cumulative incidence. And you see the exposed in the dotted line, non-exposed in the line, in the solid line. And then you see that the effect is different in the different countries. In Finland, didn't find any effect. Now we are trying to explain that, right? So you can see it in the restricted mean survival time difference. The methodology of this one is published already in BMC, Methods in Medical Research. So you see that we can use real world data, individual data, sensitive data from multiple data sources, from multiple data holders, from multiple sites in Europe and elsewhere. This is the big lesson that we've learned in the past 10 years. So, you think how we may say that we anticipated the legislation to come, because in Spain, the legislation in Spain was very much the legislation to come in Europe. So at some point, we prepare everything to be compliant enough with what we're supposed to be the point, the big point. The big point is privacy and security. This is the big point. Then will come the methodological questions. But the first one is, and I do remember myself collecting data, 200 million hospital episodes in my servers, in my institution, virtually all the hospitalizations in England, all the hospitalizations in Denmark, all the hospitalizations in Austria, in Slovenia, in Spain, in Portugal, for the big project in 2010, whose name was ECHO. And I thought, when I was required for the continuation in England of a postcode, English postcode, to have access to the data, I thought, this is no longer possible. We have to think differently. If we want to do the same, so looking at the whole population, we have to move federated. But federated is not the data is federated, or the organization are federated. There are all the things to take into account. And one thing to take into account, the big one, is with what is the process to follow? What is the data life cycle? And what to focus on? And these next slides will come to respond to this question. Almost 20 minutes. May I take 5? No problem?
Yes, please.
Yes, keep me on the whatever. First of all, and we promoted this figure in the conceptualization of the health data space. So on the left-hand side of the green border is the native collection of data. And on the right-hand side, there is the reuse of the data. And then there are two functions there. The data preparation, and you will have data holders that may be the same as in the native collection, but they have to prepare the data for secondary purposes, that they will be prepared the data for you. And they will be publishing the data sets, metadata, as ECRIN has already done. And it's been doing next week, or in 2 weeks, you will publish the metadata thing. The preparation will include the collection, of course, all the quality checks, quality assurance procedures, the standardization using, semantic standards, ideally, and then the publication of the data, metadata of the data sets. And then the second part, which is the interaction with the researcher, is what hits us the most, because is where the data application takes place, and someone has to say, you have the permission to use the data. Okay? And then there is the access to the data, the use of the data, properly said, and the finalization, which is also, feedbacking the data holder to upgrade the data sets, or to upgrade the metadata, or to upgrade something. In our case, in the case of those that are thinking of translating evidence into something, to the clinical, to the bedside, to the clinical area, in my case, to the policymakers and the regulators. Who is doing the preparation, the data holders, in the terminology of the European health data space? Who is doing the access possible? The health data access bodies. The data preparation will take place in secure process environments. And then the access to the data will take place in secure process environments. But it's interesting that many times we are mixed up with the kind of data we can reuse. I mean, open data, they have open data. Usually aggregated data may be reused without any restriction. This is open data. When it's non-open data, there may be options. They can serve you synthetic data, and it's okay for hypothesis generation, or they can serve you data sets if they haven't implemented a secure process environment where you have access to and you can use the data instead. But in any case, they will have the responsibility to prepare the data for the data set for you. So let's distinguish between data holder preparing data and the health data access body preparing the data set that you need. And let me be absolutely blunt with this. It's a completely different story. Data set means you have an idea, you have a hypothesis, you have a question, you have a protocol, you have a data management plan. Otherwise, you don't get any access at all. In practical terms, these 4 examples that I showed to you, within the health data at you, will play the role on the red area. And what we've done has been, and this is the recommendation for any federated approach, data has to remain. So what visits the data is the code, you have to cover in this, multi-site, multi-data source, multi-data holder, multi-purpose, building on sensitive data research, you need to cover these 4 layers of interoperability. This is taken, this is in a paper published a while ago in Archives of Public Health, but the figure is taken from the European Interoperability Framework. We have reinterpreted this framework that is for open data to sensitive data. Because our mission is to make things interoperable in federated research and reproducible. And then, for each of those, you have a number of questions to cover. The data visiting, we've said, the code will visit, the data didn't move, the sensitive one. The output, the aggregated, may move. You have to demonstrate need to know. You have to demonstrate that these are the data that you need to respond to the question, minimization principle. You need not identifiable IDs, but it doesn't mean necessarily that things should be anonymous. So the differential privacy principle means that there are different actors pseudonymizing and no one knows the key from each other. It's not necessarily anonymous. And disclosure policies. We have to cover disclosure policies of every institution. Cells minus with less than 5 counts can be used. Less than use it. Then an architecture. You need an architecture to develop, to deploy this kind of research. In this case, we use what is named master worker. It's a bit strange, but it's computational architecture master worker, which means that someone coordinates the PI of the project and the team that is leading the project. And then the different collaborators are the nodes, the workers, which is not always the case. So the PI may work more than that. Anyway, and to implement this workflow, the workflow starts from the research question and finalizes with the devolution of the data and to the coordinator and the compilation of the data and the meta-analysis and the publication of the results. And in between, you have quality and data quality analysis. You develop the synthetic data to prepare the algorithms, to train the algorithms while you are waiting for the data, to containerize in a trusted research environment the whole pipeline to be deployed securely in the different nodes. So when they get the data, they run and you get the results. In terms of semantics, we forgot semantics. Synthetic data, by the way, this does not solve the problem of semantics. You have the structure of the data, but not the semantics. Just with one data set, no problem with synthetic data because semantics are supposed to be the same, but when you use different data sources, semantics may not be the same. So you are just reproducing something like this structure, might be agnostically or might be intently. So non-informative distributions or informative distributions. Then the common data model is the key here. There are other elements, but the common data model is and can be spoken, as we do, spoken common data models, or in the case of pharmacoepidemiological studies, Danny will explain to us later this today, using OMOP is a good alternative. This is actually the gold standard today, right? But you don't necessarily need OMOP to do this. We haven't used OMOP in these 4 studies because it didn't work properly to cover the needs. And then technical interoperability, basically using a trusted research environment. So yeah, very sketchy. I hopefully got to the point. Excuse me, Widow, for taking 5 minutes of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the impressive insights. Let's continue to the next speech. And of course, we would also like to invite Guido Bertolini to be with us. He's with the Department of Medical Epidemiology in Mario Negri Institute for Pharmacological Research.
Thank you. Thank you for this kind invitation. I'm very happy to present some aspect of the ECRIN, which is a work in progress, and it's really a pleasure to present something. So we have heard how reusing data is really important for many purposes. So the capability of reusing data is really important. But there are fields in medicine in which this capability, so the capability of reusing data, is much, much more than important, is vital. And one of these fields is emergency medicine, which has been already cited. Well, I have no potential conflict of interest, except that I will speak well about ECRIN, of course. Why it's so vital reusing data in emergency medicine? Well, consider that in Lombardy, which is the Italian richest region, we have there the highest standard of resources. Physicians spend for each patient 33 to 36 minutes for doing everything, from collecting clinical history, understanding the value system of the patient, his will or her will, visiting, interpreting the results, discussing with colleagues, and on and on and on. Just 33 minutes. And they are caring for 8 to 10 patients simultaneously. So when they are visiting a patient, they may receive the results of a test on another patient who require immediate attention. So this is the frame. Now, guess the answer if we are asking them, hey guys, would you like to participate in this fabulous clinical trial? It takes just 15 to 20, sometimes more minutes to collect informed consent, and about 15 minutes to fill in the electronic case report form that you have to join with a special credential in the website. So they should double the time they have to cure the patients. It's simply unfeasible. And this is the reason why the scientific production in emergency medicine is quite scarce. For one paper published in emergency medicine, we have 7 in internal medicine, which is not the most prolific field in medicine, not to mention 254 in oncology. This means that physicians and nurses in emergency medicine cannot base their practice on evidence gathered in the context where they work, which violates the most important principle of modern medicine, which is summarized in the expression evidence-based medicine. They cannot. They have to use evidence gathered in completely different context, and the context of emergency department is quite unique. So the only way to enable research in this field, as in others, is reusing data that were collected for other purposes, for primary purpose. And this is where ECRIN comes into play. It is a European project funded by the European Commission. We have 11 partners, and ECRIN is one of the key partners of the project in 8 countries. And the objective is to develop new technical solutions to extract reliable data from different patient files, from different resources. But since this process is vital to enable research. Here, when we extract data, the requirements that has been several times cited of data quality becomes the most important one. Since this is almost the only way to do research in that field, the quality of the data should be absolutely one of the main target that we should ensure. Then we will pilot with 2 use cases and verify the data. What are the technical solutions? Well, the first is the most obvious. So we are going to extract reliable data from the electronic health data already in use in emergency department, which is very complex because if you have a clue about this, they are all free text. So we have to extract data from free text and some, of course, structural information from labs and so on. But mainly we have to extract data from free text. The second technical solution is to develop a new electronic health record that is designed from the very beginning to fulfill both the needs of clinical practice, of course, but also the needs of research, and possibly also the needs of healthcare providers. So this is a key aspect of the project, and I will tell you something about that. And the backbone of this both solution is to develop a natural language processing algorithm capable of understanding the free text nodes and extract the information we are searching for. Why we decided to develop a new electronic health record for this purpose? Because I do think that the most important way to ensure high quality data is to, eliminate the distance between primary use and secondary use of the data. There should not be any distance from the two. And indeed, when we started working with our clinicians, it was really interesting to write down the workflow which correspond to data flow of what they are doing with the patients. It's much more complex than expected. This is just the general workflow of what happened in the emergency department, and each box should be further expanded. This is, for example, the medical visit. It's again a complex workflow, and each box contains the data we are going to collect. And this is the very first layout of our EHR we are developing. We had to map the process because we saw that there are very different processes in this context, but the general framework is the same. And here, this is the clinical examination following the ABCD approach. We have possibility to change the framework on the paradigm, but as you see, with 3 clicks, less than 2 seconds, you are writing, the patient does not respond to either verbal or painful stimuli. The airway is started by foreign body, and then you can add some notes in black, food residue. And so the idea is to structure the health records so that you will use less as possible free text. All is structured. It takes few seconds. We simulated very complex patients, and the registration of the clinical examination takes 25 to 20 seconds. So it's super fast, but you go through a process where you can have the view of what is needed. And so the missing data decreases a lot. We already developed a similar electronic health record for ICU, for intensive care units, and it's impressive how the data quality increases. Of course, the backbone, as I was mentioned, is to develop an NLP algorithm capable of interpreting. And I would like to spend a few words about that. It's a really a complex field. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm not an expert of this. Now I'm getting closer to this new world. And essentially, well, I prepared these slides a couple of months ago. It's already updated. We have many more language models that were released in the meantime. And every 15 days, approximately, we have a new version of an already existing model or a new model that is released. And it's simultaneously exciting and frustrating, because when you started working on a model, then there is a new one that performs better, and you have to restart from almost from zero. But anyway, we consider just the open access model, and to start developing our model based on something already existing that is capable of doing that task we are interested in. We selected 7 tasks. Extraction, entity extraction. I want to extract from clinical text the disease. This is an example. You have here the text and what the model is supposed to extract from the clinical text, or the link between the test lab and results. Creatinine is 2.1. We should extract also this information, and so on. I presented few very preliminary results about that. So the first question is, are these models able to extract this data we want? What is their performance? We started with GPT, ChatGPT and GPT-4, and the result was impressive. As for clinical entity extraction, the sensitivity is 95%, with a positive predictive value of 90%. So it's really very high standard. Some less in extracting the test result relationship, but quite high level. Of course, we cannot use ChatGPT or GPT-4 because they are very expensive, and they are black boxes. You cannot do anything. So we started with our candidates, which are much more than the previous slides, and start working on them to see if we are able to teach them in doing the task we are interested in. So let's say the first version of our large language model, and this is the very preliminary results. We have some data in Italian and English. Here you have the language model, which can be classified according to their size. The size is measured by the number of parameters they have to be estimated. So the small models have to estimate 1 billion parameters. The average is 7 to 13 billion parameters, and the largest are models with 70 billion parameters. GPT-4, to give you an idea, estimate 250 billion parameters. So it's something really that requires an exceptional capability of exceptional resources. Well, you see, this is the clinical entity detection. So is it able to extract diseases, symptoms from clinical text? And you see that the small models, this is multilingual T5, does not perform really well. F1 is a combination of sensitivity and positive predictive value, so something that combine the two. And you see that the larger the model, the better performance. This is a table 1 week before, when the QN is a Chinese model, the newest model seems to perform well with 14 billion parameters. But really, now there is Llama 3, and we are assessing the Llama 3 model to see what is the performance, because we have to start from somewhere. Consider that to have this number, so to test the capability of a model to do this task requires several hours of computer running, of good computer running. So every number is the result of a lot of time and resources. For the test result relationship, again, the results are quite similar. Here we tested Llama 3. Now we are testing Llama 3 70 billion and Llama 2 70 billion, which requires almost days to be tested with our facilities. And we are obtaining quite interesting results. So you see that we have the F1 about 70, but with quite large models. Now, what is our development strategy? Is that we take this model as they are, and we expose this model to a huge amount of data coming from medicine. I wrote public data. They are not really public. They are not really public because if they were public, the model would have already seen them. These models are trained with an incredibly vast amount of data. But we have much data that this model cannot have seen. Just to give you an example, we asked 2 Italian publishers in medicine, and they were so generous that they gave us all the production they had in electronic format since the first article in electronic format, and we were able to give this to the model. We are collecting the thesis in medical field in every specialty to obtain text to give to the model. We are speaking about several billions of tokens of words, and to train this model with such amount of data requires several days of computer running. And we cannot do all at once, so we have to partition the data we are collecting and do that step by step, because it is impossible to manage. Now, with this, we reach the second version of the model, which is the original, trained to learn the medical speaking. And now we see if we gain something. Honestly, we did not think to gain much in performance, But this is the result. We did this with multilingual T5, we call medical multilingual T5, and you see that the performance increased substantially of 9 percentage points, both in Italian and in English. So it was something that we didn't expect, and it is quite promising. Now we are trying to train the bigger model with this data, and even with the test result recognition, we gain something less, because here the model does not need to know very well the medical language to connect tests and results. And but again, we gain something. So next steps is to expose the new version of the model to domain data. So we are collecting from the ECRIN site all the clinical notes that were taken in the electronic health record in 3 years, from 2021 to 2023. And we expose them to the model so that you start learning the domain. So the text that he or she, I don't know, will have to manage. And we will come to the 2.1 version. Then we expose to, we are speaking of millions of data. Then we are going to expose this new version to domain data annotated. So we are collecting thousands of these notes. We will give them to physicians, asking to do what the model will be supposed to do. So to extract the data from the text, so to show the model what is the result he is supposed to do. And we will come to the second version of the model. Then we go further with the second set of public data to have the third version, again with the same process. We will go further and trying to train the model to understand and interpret better and better the clinical notes. We will stop the process when we will not gain much from the 4.2 to 3.2, because it means that the training process does not gain much. But consider that this will be repeated for those many language models we are analyzing. And each time we train the model, it requires 3 to 4 to 7 days of computer running. And when we test again, several hours of computer running. It's a mess. Now we ask another partner to join this task because it's quite impossible. And this gives you an idea why the EI world is limited to 4 actors: Google, Amazon. This is, I think, it's a real main problem. Just to teach the model, one task requires a similar effort, which is almost untenable for most of academic or research institutes. So I think there is a problem of, trust. Yeah, before we spoke about trust in AI. It's a really difficult because it's really impossible to control all the process. We cannot have any control of this. And when this will be ready, and we are starting having something working quite promising, we will apply to some use cases. This is just the first use case, which aim to study the variability in the hospitalization decision. So when the patient comes to the emergency department, the final decision is to hospitalize or discharge the patient. By collecting data on the patient, we will be able to develop a model to predict the probability the patient, given their is characteristic, will be hospitalized. And so we will compute the expected hospitalization rate that we could compare to the observed hospitalization rate in each department, to give back each department their situation compared to the average. So this is just a simulation. Here we have an emergency department who admit more patients than expected. Here, an emergency department who admit less patients than expected. Why we choose this kind of use case? Because to close the gap between primary and secondary use, we have to give back physicians some results about all this effort, and some result that is important for them, which is not simply enable research, but if you are able to feed them back about their performance, they will be very interested in collecting the data in a different way. And this, I think, is one of the key issue of this aspect and of ECRIN. We are in our infancy, so we have many years, 3 years enough to work, and I hope that we really succeed in doing that, because if we will succeed, this will be the first brick of building research in a field where research is almost impossible. Thank you very much.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. So those were examples from the real life. What can we expect in the future from using this kind of data? Maybe because before we go into the questions, just one question to both of you. I mean, we know that in the Nordic system, in the Nordic healthcare systems, the data are already completely available. I even heard a discussion from Finland in which they said EHDS, the European health data space, is actually a step back for us because we already are there and we even do more. And they are saying that specifically in Finland, they are the second fastest aging population in Europe, and they are really interested. They need to have data. Why is this so, and what can they do against it or to modify this? So what would you say? What would you say? I mean, regarding privacy and so on, how would you compare this with your models and so on?
Sorry. You've seen that I've shown finished data in some of the examples. So, and I haven't experienced this, difficulty. Interestingly enough, Finland is the first country with a specific law, so it's charged by the parliament, about secondary use of health data. So they anticipating as being one of the countries that has been inspiring the European health data space. The point is that how to operationalize this implies in the end that different data holders, hospitals actually, as data holders, have now a new body in between them and the researchers that use those data. However, there are other institutions, THL, they has very rich cohorts, and they keep and they can do research without, if they don't use the hospital data, they can do other type of research. The point about this new body, and this is what the problem is, the front runners, they are building things. And then they've decided to be very restrictive in the interaction between the researchers and the hospital throughout them. And the plethora of research projects that are coming into this new body, which is the Health Data Access Body for Finland, makes quite difficult, to resolve the questions, not just from Finnish researchers, but from elsewhere, because any can access those data if they comply with the procedure. So I think that it's a good thing they have been the front runners, a good thing they have been inspiring the development of the European health data space, which doesn't mean necessarily that the European health data space is imposing a huge barrier impossible to overcome. There are other options in Europe. In my region, the average time, so what they've done is different. They built 7 years ago, they built a health data access body as well, that is making it's taking the data from the native sources, as I depicted, is pseudonymizing the data. This is a second pseudonymization, by the way, is doing all the data quality management procedures, is doing all the semantics, is doing everything. And it's including all the procedures along with the ethical committee in the region, and it's representing the whole experience of the population living in the whole life. It's not just hospital patients, it's the whole population. And every single day, 4 in the morning, every contact of everyone in the region is stored and upgrades the data lake. So tomorrow, there will be new data from new patients or for all patients with new data in a prospective way. I mean, it's collecting prospectively. So, and the access is much, much easier. And they are serving 200 projects so far. And for the whole population. So it's not a question about privacy security, it's the whole population in there. And pseudonymized data, we are obliged in Spain, I don't know if you know that, we are obliged to use pseudonymization by default because we need to track back if needed. And this is quite a strange thing, but we are obliged. And nothing happens. I mean, there is no in the judiciary, there is no question about this system that we are using in the region. So something is the true in between, right? I mean, maybe it's not our wealth of data with everything. You can imagine lab tests, electronic health records, pharmaceutical prescription dispensations. Now they're including the genes, they're including the biobanks data, they're including images, et cetera, everything in there, and updating every single day. Pseudonymized, and nothing happens because it's under our law. Maybe this is an extreme, and the other extreme is no access to data. Maybe the Finnish system is in between. I think it's worth for research moving towards my case, my regional achievements, I guess. So there are clinical research, I mean, whatever kind of research is there. I guess this is our aspiration as researchers, right? Under the GDPR, under the AI Act, under the new regulation. I guess this. So there is something else, which is what I mean. If a region within a country within the European Union, under the same jurisdiction of everyone in Europe, can do this, why the rest not? It's not about legal things. It's about something else.
Well, I have to say that I have always been very jealous about this possibility in the Scandinavian countries. But as far as I know, this pertain most administrative data, which are absolutely free, and indeed epidemiology in those countries is really standard. We are speaking about clinical data, so data from the clinical world, from electronic health records, I'm not updated about their situation, but as far as I know, they are really in the front line with administrative data. I think that they could help us to do the most important step, which is doing quite the same with clinical information. And it's much, much more complex because they are mainly unstructured. And so we have to develop this system, as the one I showed you, to really extract data from them. So it's impossible to do that without artificial intelligence, without NLP systems, and which are in their infancy now.
Well, I guess that the discussion will eventually come to the European Health Data Space Regulation after all. I mean, this would affect all the administrative processes, and this is not only a vision, actually it becomes regulation, it will eventually have to become an infrastructure. So I don't know if we should proceed with the questions to the audience. I have questions now which are not in the slide, but let's start interacting. Okay, the first question would be for you to tell us which country do you come from, and this will be related with the next question having to do with the relevant infrastructures which are already there. And more specifically, I will give away the answer, the question, whether you know if there is a health data access body already available in your country. Okay, somebody's watching from Japan. That's good news. Okay, these are the questions. Okay, I will go to the next question, which I have already gave up. Are you familiar with your health data access body in your country and the status that that this organization works, if any? Let's see also some results. Okay. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people say yes. Also, a lot of people say no. The reality is that health data access bodies are currently being built in the European countries, funded by European money. So even for, I mean, we all know that Finland has already a health data access body. It's called FinData. We know that France already has a health data hub, and other developed countries already have some infrastructures which could be or will be the health data access body after they're finalized. For example, in Greece, I know that the health data access body is currently being set up. And the same applies for all the European countries. But people are not really sure there is such a thing and what's going on. So this is also a big issue, because if you don't know there is such a thing, this means that you don't know what processes are there, what do you have to do to get access to data, or even not to get access to data. This is also a valid situation. But still, things need to be formalized, processes need to be there, and this need to be transparent. I mean, we should know why Pantelis was denied access. We should know that Pantelis asked for data, and we should know why he was denied access, if this happened. I would take the microphone to Thodoris. So Thodoris, please introduce yourself and start discussing about the situation in Greece. I mean, did you know that health data access body is currently being set up?
No, not even. I mean, I'm Theodore Dalakis from Athena Research Center. I also voted for the first, right? Because except these data points that are coming from some national authorities, I don't think that people that are somehow even involved in this are fully aware of data access bodies, appoints, and how, I mean, the tools that you need in order to collect that. Okay. So it's impressive, but I think most of the people, although even they are strongly involved in this area, somehow are not familiar with data access bodies, the policies that you have to follow, and the tools that you have to use really technically in order to be able to have access.
There is none yet. They are currently being set up. And the fact that we don't know about it, we are both engineers working on health informatics, on medical informatics, and I don't know if it's our fault or if it's the European health data space, if there is a gap there, but still we have to work about it. And another question that came to my mind as you were speaking is that I have heard some criticism already about the European health data space, even before being there as an infrastructure. I mean, there are people, for example, arguing that there are too many things left for the national governments to implement in the context of European health data space. And there is a worry that some countries, which might lag behind for any reason, for example, not set up a health data access body, and this could affect the whole European health data space. Perhaps they don't have the money, they don't have the political will to support such a process, they don't put it as a priority. But in any case, this could, do you have any insights to share or any thoughts on that?
So I think this is a huge strategy, and we've got an agreement just 1 month ago, and then
after 2 years of discussion, I have
even more, even more, because the first commitment text passed to the council, if I remember well, at the beginning of last year, which means that to get this recommendation for discussion to the council, the commission developed a lot of the proposal itself. So yeah, and then the conceptualization came before. So there has been quite time. I would say it has been this commission term. So in the last 6 years, where this has been producing the output that we see now. But now the legislation actually has 2 chapters. And partly there's been the difficulty for the discussion has been that chapter 1, 2, and 3 previous to chapter 4, I don't remember well, is primary space. Chapter 4 on, and chapter 4 in particular, secondary use for 3 overarching purposes: research, regulation, and policy making. But we do have the text now and ready for signature, because there is a real agreement between the 3 parties: the Parliament, the Council, and the Commission. And now there are a number of projects that are building the concepts and the future developments of the implementing acts. So most of the chapters, most of the articles, in chapter 4, end implementing. The Commission is entitled to develop this under an implementing act or a delegate act. And then there are a number of projects. So, for example, when it comes to permits, data access permits, now there is data access permits, secure process environments, and the interaction across the different nodes of the different member states, and the cataloging of the data sets. There is a new joint action, DATAS 2, building upon that as well. In the Article 56 that I'm fully involved is to cover the labeling of the data, quality of the data sets, and the maturity of the data holders. There is another project that is Quantum. Quantum will 2.5 years. We started just at the beginning of the year. And there is money now for health data access bodies to implement and to deploy the infrastructure required. And so this is a process that will take 6 to 10 years in the end. Another commission term and very likely more. But there is a commitment, and all the member states have signed it up. So there is an agreement, and this is a regulation. So this direct implementation. So what the countries are doing now, and I'm surprised with the 35% of, maybe they are concentrated in Germany and France and Finland, the responses, but but the health data access bodies are thinking how to, the potential health data access bodies. The farm in Germany has been named as the one to be, but it's not set up anything yet. In my
The same applies in Greece.
Exactly. In my case, in Spain, they are thinking how to do it. There is just one real one, which is the Aragonese one that I'm coming from. But it's not named health data access bodies because the health data access bodies are now the real new term. So this will come. So we have to combine this idea that countries are preparing for it, but this by far will take time because the procedures and the outlined in the legislation are not really detailed. Yeah, as any European big regulation, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the insights. I think you have a question.
First, yeah, are there any questions from you guys? There are other questions online, but maybe first.
I have a totally different question to Guido. When you showed your results with slight improvement, if you go to the next version, answering myself, and there are some examples in the past, whether you will come to a kind of a plateau that you will not, you cannot increase, or you have to do so much input to increase for very little, and that may have to do with uncertainty, fuzziness in the data. So the more data may not really help from a certain point. So did you discuss that, or is there any evidence on these possible limitations of the models?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, this is the reason why we started testing ChatGPT, GPT-4, because we thought that is the standard, the plateau. I think we cannot overperform that kind of model. So yes, we expect to reach a plateau. We don't know where. Probably the performance of GPT-4 will be now there is GPT-5 coming, and so it depends. But I'm absolutely I agree with you that plateau will exist, which include the uncertainty that are in the data. And this is the reason why we also start designing a new electronic health record, because now to gain something, we need to have tools that are designed for this task. Otherwise, it's impossible to reach high standard. We also saw from our physicians, they already start annotating the notes, so to extract data from the notes, and sometimes they are unable to exact say what was the characteristic of the patient there, because the notes were not very clear or data were missing. So at a certain point, the only way, and this I think is an issue even for the EHDS, we have to think about new version of our electronic health record. If we want to extract reliable data, we have to change the EHR, because as they are organized now, they were not planned, they were not designed to extract data. And this make a big difference.
So I mean, coming from clinical trial management and working since 20 years in clinical trial management, one of our cornerstones is, of course, validation. Everything needs to be validated, what we're using in clinical trials. So, and being by myself pretty ignorant on large language models. So how is this being validated? I mean, how do you validate this kind of model?
Well, definitely we validate with what is called benchmark. So we build a set of cases that are exactly what the model is supposed to be to solve, and we ask humans to solve the task, and then we expose just the case, not the results, to the model, and we compare just the result of the model with the result of a human who is doing the same task. This is the only way. But we are speaking about thousands of this task, of this benchmark, to be quite confident about the performance.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
I have put the question also online, so it's exactly what you were asking. Validation means if you take your first case, your example which you took, that is at least according to the definition of a class 2A medical device, which means you have to undergo ISO 13485 with your whole development. So the whole institution must be certified, and you have to approve the medical device before bringing to the market and then going to clinical trials. I know it's a mess, but
yeah,
how do you think to cover that?
Nothing is like this, but I absolutely agree that we should regulate this.